It's like I see a lot of people online talking about this immigrant issue, and they either don't have kids or they don't think it could happen to their kids. Their idea is, hey, shouldn't have fucking come over here. You get those kind of people. Broke the law. Shouldn't have fucking come over here if your kid, you didn't want to get your kid separated. If you were in the presence of a woman who came over here from Guatemala and she's poor and she's starving and they're taking her baby away and she's wailing and screaming from a primal place in her DNA that the one thing she loves more than anything is being taken away. A baby.
Yeah.
If that doesn't freak you the fuck out, you're not a part of the team, man. You're missing it. You're missing it. What are we here for? We're here for 100 years of whatever. That's what we're here for. If you want to spend 100 years saying, hey, she shouldn't have fucking broke the law, I don't want you on the team. You're an asshole. Right? And I don't give a fuck if you're right or left. I don't care if you're religious, or I don't care if you're an atheist. If that's what you support, you're an asshole. And we don't want you on our team. Okay? So, but if you agree with certain economic policies that I don't agree with, and we could have a discussion about it, we could figure out why you agree, and we could figure out why people are allowing all of this money to get into politics. Why are we allowing all these special interest groups and lobbyists to interfere with our laws and influence our politicians and create all this shit that we don't want? Well, here's the number one reason. You can't just vote online. You can't just vote. It's not one person, one vote.
Right.
It's the Electoral College, and there's a lot of checks and balances that are in place. That's all wonderful and groovy, but it's not giving the trust to the people.
Right.
The trust to the people that they're informed, that they can make their own decisions, that more people should be able to make these decisions. But they're happening now. That 28-year-old girl who won in New York, 28-year-old
That's it.
Democratic socialist. Whether I agree with her or not, and I don't know if I do or don't. I bet I agree with her on a lot of things. I think education should be free. I think we should figure out a way. If we could pay for bombs, we could pay for schools. I think this idea that everybody should have health care, it's a great idea. Who the fuck wants people to not be healthy? Who wants people to be hurt and not be able to fix it? Are you really saying that struggling people should have to pay exorbitant amounts of money to get fixed when we could maybe chip in and help members of our team? That's stupid. Fill it up. Figure it out yourself. I had to. You got lucky, bitch. You got lucky you don't have leukemia. You didn't break both your legs when you were 18. Your parents are dead.
Right.
You got lucky, piece of shit. These are people on our team.
Right.
Because I'm not talking about people who are lazy, good for nothing, losers, mooching off the system. You're going to have that too. Well, we got to figure out how to educate people so that happens less and less. That's what we got to figure out how to do.
All right. This is Give Them an Argument. I am about to be speaking with David Feldman and then Emma Viglund, Nando Villa. David Griscom, of course, is here for another segment of Outlaws and Revolutionaries. The voice you just heard was a clip from a couple of years ago from podcaster and comedian Joe Rogan, where he was talking about the Trump administration's family separation policy and why he thought that anybody who supported it was not on what he called team human. Now, Joe Rogan is far from a consistently progressive person. He's kind of all over the place. And that way, I actually think I wrote about this in an article that I wrote with Michael Brooks back in January when Rogan endorsed Bernie Sanders, that Rogan is where a lot of Americans are at, which is to say that he's not a weird obsessive like us. He doesn't think about politics all the time. So he has a bunch of disparate political instincts that don't necessarily cohere together into a consistent worldview. That is absolutely true. But he does have some very un-Trump instincts and even some very social democratic instincts on some issues. So when I saw in the last week, since I saw you guys last, that Rogan offered to host a 4-hour debate on his podcast with Joe Biden and Donald Trump, and Trump said, yeah, sure, I'd love to. I know this is shocking because we're talking about Donald Trump, who normally thinks everything through very carefully. But yeah, I think maybe Trump didn't think this one through. I think that he might not get as friendly a reception there as he thought he would. But of course, Biden, as far as I know, has not yet responded in any way to this offer. Could talk about whether this would be a good move or a bad move for him. But what I would really like to happen is not, in fact, for Biden to accept Rogan and Trump's offer. It would be for Biden to turn it down, and then for Joe Rogan to say, hey, Trump, come on, I'm going to debate you myself. How about it? And that sounds like the setup to a joke, but honestly, speaking as a debate nerd, my professional opinion is that Rogan, when he does have right-wing guests on, he has right-wing guests on all the time. He tends to nod along with everything they say, just like he nods along to Cornel West or Edward Snowden when they're on his show. He's a little all over the place. He's somewhat prone to believe conspiracy theories. He's very prone to agreeing with whatever his current guest says. But when he does engage with right-wing guests who say things he disagrees with, sometimes it's very, very good. So one more clip of that.
Operated in a slim way. But what the government doesn't do anything good.
Right.
Name one problem you could possibly have in your life, Joe Rogan, that you'd be like, get the government to solve this. Did they do the post office well? No. What do they do well?
They do the post office pretty good, actually.
But guess what? If the post office closed tomorrow, it would be all right. You'd still get mail. Amazon would pick. No, it wouldn't. Amazon would pick that up.
You would have to send things through UPS. It would cost a lot more.
It wouldn't, though. Competition would start kicking in, and between UPS and FedEx and Amazon and drones and blah 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 and DHL, they'd all start. It would probably drop prices because right now we've just got this artificial thing that sits there that then allows them to price according to that. But if you drop that, why is the government in that business anymore? I have 3 chickens. I've really done the Joe Rogan lifestyle here over the last couple of years. So I have 3 chickens right now. I'm going to give you a good UPS story. We ordered them. They were born in August on a Monday in Cleveland. They hatched that day. They threw them in a box with a little hole, USPS, and they showed up at my door in LA on a Tuesday. The USPS has been doing that for about 100 years.
It's the only way you can do it, by the way. You can't order chickens through any other method.
Oh, is it just USPS?
Yeah.
So actually, I was giving the USPS credit there because my chickens all arrived live.
Yeah, they send them through chicks.
Yeah.
That's the only way you're buying these live chicks. That's the way you get them. You get them through the U.S. Postal Service.
But
you don't get them through UPS.
I'm pretty sure, though, that if the USPS stopped, it didn't exist anymore, you'd still get chickens delivered. And Amazon could probably do it even more effectively. That's my point. It's like, I'm not saying these things have to be eliminated tomorrow. I'm not even really calling for them to be eliminated. But just generally, what problem would everything you're building here right now, right? Do you want the government to tell you how to do all these things and all the regulations that you got to have your electric thing this far from this and like all
the regulations like that for construction are important, though. You do have to make sure that people don't do stupid shit.
But
make sure you
generally,
don't have a power line that's near a water line. There's a lot of.
But I would put most of that on the builders, though. They want to build things that are good. Now I get it.
That's not true. Listen, people.
People are going to build
corners all the time. Like you have to have regulations when it comes to construction methods, or people are going to get fucked.
They cut corners when there are regulations anyway.
They do. They would cut a lot more if there.
All right. So that gives you an impression. You should watch the whole thing. It is very funny. But right now, we're going to be joined in just a few minutes by Emma Viglund. But right now, we are joined by David Feldman, who, like Joe Rogan, is a comedian who does a podcast where he talks about politics. In fact, they're basically the same person as far as I can tell. So welcome to the show, David.
Thank you. And Dave Rubin is also a comedian. And he, for the first time in my life, watching Dave Rubin, I'm actually ashamed to call myself a moron. Is there chicken protective services? I can't trust Dave Rubin with chickens. What? That's scary. The idea of him raising chickens.
Yeah. So you and Joe Rogan and Dave Rubin are basically all the same person because you're all people with a background in comedy who do podcasts where they talk about politics.
And we're all geniuses, comedians. Yeah. We're the canaries in the coal mine. We're just the smartest people out there. We are effed. If people think that you should get your news and your philosophy from comedians, well, this is why we ended up the way we are. We give way too much respect to comedians. I think the thing with Rogan, the idea that, okay, he'll interview Donald Trump. And the great thing about Joe is he gives his guests enough rope to hang themselves, as we just saw. The problem is we've already given Donald Trump enough rope to hang the entire country, which in fact is happening. We know. The only way Trump can hurt himself as a candidate is to say something lucid and clear-headed. So,
because it'd be bad for the brand.
it would be bad for the brand. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think, some of his advisors might have been nervous last night. We're recording this on a Saturday. Most people aren't going to see it until Monday. But Ruth Bader Ginsburg passed away last night, and Trump's initial reaction to it was like a politician's reaction. It was like, oh, that's terribly sad. And,
Right.
that just, I just have to imagine. It's like, you remember Bulworth?
Sure. Warren Beatty, Halle Berry.
Yeah. I mean, like in a lot of ways, Trump is Republican Bulworth, that he is this like entertaining figure who goes way off script and does things that should be political suicide, but somehow they have the opposite effect.
Right.
And there's a scene, I'm going to spoil a movie from decades ago, but there's a scene at the end of Bulworth where Bulworth, is sort of calmed down at the end of the movie, and he goes out to do a press conference. He's wearing a suit, and his advisor's like, "What are you doing? Right? Why are you wearing a suit? This isn't how you got elected, right? You're off brand, you're off script." And so I have to imagine, that like a good Trump advisor would have the same reaction, that you should be ranting about how Ruth Bader Ginsburg, was really part of Antifa, and she had the Chinese virus, what is this, like, just sort of respectfully noting her passing?
I'm sorry, did you say something? I was thinking about Halle Berry. Did you?
Sure.
I didn't hear a word you said. I dated her sister, Dingle. Very hard to get rid of.
This is golden material. This is amazing.
I dumped Dingle, and she just would, anyway. Yeah. I'm very optimistic about the future. I am. And Ruth Bader Ginsburg, great Supreme Court justice. And I would like to say that considering what women get paid compared to men, she should be placed on the $73 bill.
Yeah.
Yep. Okay.
Yeah. No, this is good stuff. This is like,
Thank you.
You should have a little gong behind you for like after you finish these jokes.
These aren't jokes. These are observations. I'm very...
It's very serious political commentary. Yeah?
Very, very. Did I lose you on the Dingle? Are you jealous that I dated her sister? They're saying that Ted Cruz might replace Ginsburg. Have you heard that?
Yeah, I mean, see, that would be on brand, right? Like that would be about perfect. Like Ted Cruz is pretty good. Like what would be really good is like Jared.
Right.
Like Jared could be on the Supreme Court. That sounds about right.
But Ted Cruz, I think you could fast track Ted Cruz to the Supreme Court. I think McConnell could get Republicans and Democrats on both sides of the aisle to fast track him to the Supreme Court because they all want to get him out of the Senate. Anything to get Ted Cruz out of the Senate. He is the most disliked man in Washington. So I think he could actually be on the Supreme Court before November 3rd.
Yeah, I mean, look. In all seriousness, I think that whether Ted Cruz, I mean, I'm sure the Trump's, going to pick some well-groomed Federalist Society ghoul, who's been training for this for their entire
with a
life.
rape record. Hopefully, he'll have a rape record.
Sure, I mean that's pretty standard at this point.
Yeah, got to stay on brand.
That's right. Yeah. That somebody who was part of the like Brett Kavanaugh's like group, and that he went out to like rent vacation cottages with, and throw up all over them and lose the money that they'd spent on the deposit, right? And has since then devoted his life in some suburb where he's been like carefully cultivated in Northern Virginia for like decades. Like the Bourne Identity, right? That you spend your entire life preparing for this moment so that you can get in there and you can destroy what's left of collective bargaining in American workplaces, right, and destroy the ability of the regulatory state to protect the environment, and all the other stuff that makes these people tick, makes them get up in the morning. But I have an incredibly hard time imagining that there's anything that like Chuck Schumer will or even particularly wants to try to do to stop this. I mean, I'd love to be surprised by that, but I mean, maybe not by November 3rd, but you know, you don't have to get in by if there are going to be months of challenges to the outcome of the election, you don't have to get in by November 3rd.
Good times.
Yeah,
Good times.
no,
Lots to look. I think one day we're all going to look back at this and have a good long cough. I think it's not as bad as. I don't think it's as bad as it seems. I think we're just too deep into it. I'm very optimistic.
all right, good stuff. We are now also joined by Emma Viglund from the Young Turks, who I always used to really enjoy watching on the Michael Brooks show. How are you doing today, Emma?
I'm good. I'm in my casual wear, the comfiest sweatshirt I could find, and apologize for the sun glare. I can't afford curtains, so this is where we're at.
Well, I mean, it could be worse. You could be wherever
Yeah.
David is joining us
Right.
from.
Whatever hellscape that
What?
is.
Oh, the TV on the floor. I know. I'm moving the TV into the other room. I want to read more. Yeah.
Right.
Oh.
Right.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you have an interior decorator who's just top notch.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, so it's been a fun year. Everything that's happened in the last several months is awesome. You know, all very happy about it. That, you know, like things were looking a little bad at the beginning. That, you know, Bernie Sanders looked like he might get the Democratic nomination, and obviously that would have been terrible. But since then, things have really been looking up. It's been very positive. I think last count, we are rounding off about 200,000 coronavirus deaths.
But if you take away the blue states, Ben, that's basically zero.
Okay. Yeah, it's only 20,000 or something if you take away all the states that don't count.
Literally what Trump said. And I saw someone tweeted like, well, if you take away the blue states on 9/11, no one died. So
that is looking
good.
on the bright side. Yeah, that's true, right? Like, and even even Washington D.C., right, where the Pentagon, was hit. I mean, it doesn't have statehood, right? You know, because obviously we don't allow people in that city.
It has deep statehood, but yeah.
Yeah, that's right. But you know, certainly it votes, you know, for Democrats, you know, when it can. So it's basically like, you know, like a blue state. So yeah, you take those away, then, you know, not nobody, but a few people in Pennsylvania. You know, it wasn't that bad.
Right. Totally.
So yeah, I think so. We got, depending on how you count it, you know, 200,000 or a lot less people die of coronavirus. Think about, you know, half the country is literally on fire. That might be an exaggeration, but you know, but a lot of stuff is on fire. I see pictures from my little brother who lives in California of the sky turned blood red, you know, which is nice and appropriate for everything else that's gone on. And just to cap it off, as I was just discussing with David, you know, we got some very solid material, I think, there that he'd been practicing in the Catskills in 1955. That Donald Trump gets another Supreme Court justice. So things are really, really, really looking up.
Yeah, I mean, I heard you guys talking a little about the possibility of Ted Cruz. And for me, I mean, Josh Hawley, he also floated, right? Who's a senator who wants to run for president in 2024. This is, to me, and it was actually a point made to me by one of my colleagues, a clear attempt for Trump, an inartful attempt to clear the field for someone like Don Jr. in 2024. Seriously, though. This Trump brand name is not going to go away with the Republican base. So Cruz obviously wants to run again in 2024, but he can't run if he's got a lifetime appointment on the Supreme Court. But like I
think Don Jr. would be a great Supreme Court justice. Of course, everybody would have to wear white robes and a hood.
Right. Yeah, and just grease their hair so that they're flammable with every move they make. They can't even set foot in California without combusting spontaneously. So obviously, it's interesting, but the Ruth Bader Ginsburg news, just really the cherry on top of a fantastic year. I almost forgot that Bernie Sanders, just the hopes for the nomination, that was still in 2020, and then it came crashing down in March. I was there. I was at headquarters
Yeah.
on Super Tuesday in Vermont, in Burlington. It was not a fun time.
Yeah, no, I can imagine, right? Like, so, and this is really hard to remember because this sounds like we're talking about something that happened during the Ford administration, but in February, right, then Bernie had just completed the hat trick of Iowa, New Hampshire, and Nevada. I went to Nevada and like just before the caucus. Stayed with somebody I only knew from Twitter, so I probably could have been axe murdered, but I wasn't, right? And
You survived. Yeah, we were gonna meet up, but we didn't have the opportunity. That stunk.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and and then
Right.
the days of being able to meet in person were over. But there was this minute there when that looked inevitable. That at the very least, like the entire mainstream political discussion was, okay, Bernie is obviously going to show up to the convention with more delegates than anybody else. But if it's just a plurality, it's not an outright majority, is it okay to give it to somebody else on the second round, right? That was the conversation that was going on back at the end of February. And then Super Tuesday happened, and then an apocalyptic plague happened. And then since then, like, I mean, we haven't hit zombies yet, but I mean, like that seems inevitable, right? I mean, like that seems the that that things have been trended in. And I think that there can be like this sense of like grim inevitability. It's like, okay, yeah, what else you got, right? I mean, of course things are going to happen this way. Which can be bad in its own way, but I also see what strikes me, and actually I'd be curious about your take on this, right? As this weird overconfidence still from a lot of people about the election, like that Biden just has it in the bag, that he can't lose, which seems particularly weird to me because I get deja vu, right? I mean, like I remember this from 2016, and in 2016 at least Hillary volunteers could theoretically like go out and knock on doors and talk to people in person.
Is this for I didn't know if this was directed for me, but yeah, no, I do get frustrated by the overconfidence. I'm reminded, I'm a big sports fan, and there's these analytics like fanboys when they talk about NFL or stuff like that, right? And they think they can see the whole picture based on numbers as opposed to watching the game, when you can see, okay, this receiver is clearly more talented than this, but the game script doesn't dictate that he's getting the ball or whatever. And that's kind of how I feel about the election in many ways. If you're unable to see the forest through the trees and you're only like a Nate Silver data fanboy and you're going to check out, around the margins in this Pennsylvania county here, Biden's doing great, but you can't see that he's barely speaking full sentences, that's a problem. And you can't see the full picture of the election without those very real concerns. So I think Biden's in a significantly better position than Hillary Clinton was in many ways. One, the desire for stability is tangible in the country. People are desperate for some sort of strong hand at the top who's going to push the country in the right direction. I mean, I read a study on how many people would trust a vaccine that comes out around Election Day, and it's a majority of Americans that say, I wouldn't take that. And because the whole process has become politicized, and when you're in a crisis like this, people don't want that. So that is huge in Biden's favor, but everything else is disastrous. Biden is unable to talk, and that is like not something that the media ignores and it's just going to go away. It's a huge issue. And when it undercuts his pitch to be the steady leader, when Trump is like, this guy's mentally unfit and he's going to rallies every night and like bringing the house down. So there is some of that dynamic, but I'm not going to lie and say that Biden's in a similar position as Hillary Clinton, because Trump now has to defend his record and everyone wakes up in the morning, they're in quarantine, they've lost their job, their sister, their aunt died of COVID-19, whatever it may be. People understand that things are bad in the country right now, and Trump has to overcome that. And I think that's a significantly larger hurdle than Biden having to overcome the things I just mentioned.
Is there a virtue to nominating somebody who can't string a sentence together? Eisenhower couldn't, Reagan couldn't, George W. Bush couldn't.
Maybe people see that, but like Bush, people just were like, that guy's stupid, kind of like me, right? Biden, most people are like, that guy's senile.
Yeah,
right. That was Reagan's charm.
Well, Reagan was, but I think that a lot of that was, especially at first, right? My understanding is like that wasn't like right out in the open, right? Like Reagan wasn't.
It was more second term Reagan, from my understanding, of when he already had deregulated and given the economy this massive sugar high that people were like, this is never going to end, until it totally did. That's my guess, but yeah, right. And Reagan wasn't like, I think maybe it like became a little bit more obvious as the second term went on. I think maybe if like social media had existed, some things that could just sort of fly by the radar, some journalists would kind of mention in their book 2 years later, would maybe have been bigger deals, when Reagan would get confused about his own history as an actor and like think that he was like in Europe in World War II. But
being vague, being senile or being stupid or inarticulate allows voters to hear what they want to hear. If you're predisposed to vote for Biden and he can't string a sentence together, then you do it for him internally. He's like a hot medium. Marshall McLuhan talked about this. So you do the work for him and see in him whatever you want to see, kind of like what we did with Obama. So this may work. Unfortunately, I'm rooting for Biden. This may work for him.
I hope.
Yeah, I mean, I hope so, right? I mean, I think I've been clear on that, right? That like Biden, I don't think we should lie about it, right? Like I think that Biden politically is what he has always been and will be, right? Like I think this idea that Biden like that anything that he says right now where he sort of vaguely gestures at some sort of quasi Green New Deal or anything like that, right? Like I don't take any of that very seriously, but right, like I also don't think that he is going to be crusading to try to do the things that Trump has already been doing and would continue to do in a second term, like destroy what's left of public sector unions and destroy much of what's left of the regulatory state, right? Like, I don't think he would do those things. And so I think as a defensive thing, yeah, right. I mean, I'll suck it up and vote for him. But I don't know. I mean, David, like you said that you think that the vagueness, can work well for him. But what's your feeling about the debates, right? Like is that, because Donald Trump is very good at that, right? I understand like he wasn't good in the debates with Hillary. He was okay, right? But like, Hillary quote unquote won, right? Whatever that means. But
let me just quickly say then, like, I was at 2 of the debates and I'm in the media room, right? And people are like visibly gasping whenever Trump, remember when he said, she's like, I'm so grateful that someone like Donald Trump is not in charge of appointing an attorney general or something like that. And he goes, that's because you'd be in jail. Right. And like, to me, that was an unbelievable political moment that still resonates with me to this day. And honestly, with her perception as a criminal, it was a political win. But then the entire pundit class thought she won the debates, where I don't see that. It's all about memorability and one-liners. And he made it a WWE contest, but sorry.
No, that's absolutely right. Actually, if you read Matt Taibbi's book, Hate Inc., he's got this extended metaphor in there about Trump and the WWE and how if you look at the way that in wrestling, audiences can start to root for heels, like you can see a lot of what's going on with Trump's appeal.
Right.
But I was going to say, right, that like whatever you think about, I did those debates with Hillary, ripping his way through the rest of the Republican field in 2016, that he was very, very good at, right? Like,
I still love watching it.
yeah, absolutely, right?
Him ripping on Ted Cruz to his face, it's like the most I've ever liked Trump in my life.
Yeah, him slamming
Jeb.
Jeb, right? You know, and talking about, you know, his mother, and Jeb's like, my mother is amazing, and, you know, Trump says, oh, yeah, maybe she should be president, right? Like, like he's like just as like he's very, oh my God, the thing that like the Marco Rubio, you know, the bottle of water,
Yeah.
Like I mean, he is a very, very talented insult comic,
but there's no audience.
That's a good point.
Crowd.
There isn't. So you think that this wouldn't be like that? That the force of Donald Trump's skill as an insult comic coming up against Biden's occasional inability to tell his sister from his wife, right? That's
right.
a thing that happened a few months ago.
Well, he's appealing to the Alabama vote.
Okay. But you think that the debates will actually be good for Biden?
He did really well against Bernie when there was no audience because of the COVID-19. So I think it's going to be a test to see who looks more presidential because there's no audience. It won't be the freak show. It won't be the wrestling match we're looking for, I hope. And I thought that Biden did a pretty good job against Sarah Palin, just smiling and looking vice presidential. And I thought he did a good job with Ryan. So I think Biden may surprise us. He just has to do well. Doesn't have to do great. And don't forget, you know, I remember watching the Reagan-Carter debate, the first one. I was smoking a lot of dope at the time, but I thought, man, this is hysterical. I can't believe anybody would even consider Ronald Reagan as president. And then the next day, the punditocracy and the people said Reagan won.
Yeah, and I mean, like, look, I mean, there's a question about how much these things ever actually matter. I think maybe sometimes they matter when you're in a situation like Bloomberg was in the Democratic primaries, where it just becomes quickly obvious that you don't have this skill, and you somehow didn't expect to have to defend your record, and he was just kind of eaten alive in that debate, right? And that probably really did hurt him. I mean, I think there's some evidence for that, you know, from Bloomberg volunteers and things like that. But
if I were advising Joe Biden, I would tell him, don't go negative. Don't criticize Trump. You already have your minions doing that. Sell your platform to the American people. Just stand in front of the American people. Everybody's watching, and no matter what he calls you, Sleepy Joe, he brings up the sun. Tell the American people what you have to offer them.
He has to do a lot of that more.
And lie to the American people. Lie, Joe. Lie.
Emma?
Well, he certainly has to do a lot more of selling himself. There's a significant amount of anti-Trump sentiment that you can ride, but we saw in 2016 that it's certainly not enough. But the difference between 2016 is the Hillary factor. I mean, she was severely unliked, remains extremely unliked. She was the subject of decades of Republican propaganda against her, much of which was not earned. The left-wing criticisms of Hillary Clinton certainly earned, but a lot of things made up. Books written about her, Dinesh D'Souza documentaries made about her, just constantly putting her as the face of corruption in Washington, and that hurt her so much, especially when Trump called her crooked. So that connected, right? Those two things made sense for people. Biden, people don't feel that way about him. And that's huge. And there's an enormous polling shift in trustworthiness. In 2016, around this time, Trump had like 20 points on Hillary Clinton and who was a more trustworthy candidate, which should have sent off alarm bells for everybody. And now you look at trustworthiness and Trump is around, I think, 20 points less than Biden.
Yeah.
That's huge. That's a huge metric. And I think one of the pieces of polling data that should be taken seriously.
You know,
there's a lot that shouldn't be, but.
Right. There's been a shift in American politics. It used to be axiomatic that you couldn't elect a senator with a track record. You always had to nominate for president an outsider like Reagan, like George W. Bush, like Jimmy Carter, like Bill Clinton. These were all outsiders because they didn't have a paper trail.
Even Obama, you can say, was an outsider because
Absolutely.
of fresh
Yeah,
face.
he'd only been in for a couple of years.
Yeah,
Right.
because you cannot run a Washington insider because they end up saying, I voted for that bill before I voted against it. Remember the Kerry that every time you try to run a Washington insider or somebody with a track record in Washington, D.C., there's just too much garbage to dig up on them. Bernie would have probably, he was an outsider, but not really.
Well, I mean, he was an outsider in that he wasn't identified with the establishment, and I think that he got a lot of mileage out of that. And I think there is some evidence that he did better with independents for sure, and even persuadable Republicans because of that, right? Plus because his message, obviously resonated.
Trump was the ultimate.
Yeah.
Trump was the ultimate outsider, at least perceived that way.
Yeah, right. Although it's interesting because I remember at the very first debate that Trump was in the Republican primaries, one of his lines that I didn't really hear him repeat much afterwards, but it was like this weirdly honest thing, was like he was talking about how he knew that all the other politicians on the stage were super corrupt because he gave them all money and then they did things for him.
Yeah, that was incredible. That also bolstered the whole drain the swamp narrative. I'll never forget the first political event I went to. I'm like name dropping all these events I went to, but I don't mean to do that. It's just like these things stick out in my mind. And don't worry, I stay at a Holiday Inn or like a Comfort Inn. TYT does not roll out the red carpet. But the first event I went to ever as an intern was I went to Trump's speech after Bernie Sanders had basically officially conceded at Trump Soho, I believe, in New York. And he just goes in on how Bernie was right. Bernie's an outsider. The DNC completely manhandled him and screwed him over, and it was Hillary Clinton. And a lot of this landed because there was truth to it. Same with the crooked Hillary thing. The best political narratives that are used dishonestly in the way he does begin with a kernel of truth. And Trump's better at that than anybody, but he's not doing that effectively with Biden. One of the stupidest things he's doing is trying to tie Biden to rioting and looting while at the same time criticizing the crime bill and saying, oh, he's locking up all of these black and brown people. Which one is it? Is he buddy with the rioters and looters, and is he weak on crime, or did he push through a draconian, terrible crime bill, the reality, and is the candidate that's actually more aligned with your position? That's true. But there's an incoherence and an inconsistency to the way he's going about things, as opposed to like glomming on to the populist outsider rhetoric and talking about money and politics in a very odd way.
Well, there's also a weird reversal there, right? Like, because in 2016...
I missed what you said, Ben, sorry.
Oh, sorry. I was going to say there's also like a weird reversal there, because in 2016, like I said, he was going to drain the swamp, and like he was all about like talking about how Hillary Clinton was part of the establishment. The last campaign ad he did before the election was full of like images of Goldman Sachs, and that was his pitch, right? I mean, that that Hillary was representing, the globalists and the people who are, keeping down, working class Americans. And now it seems like there's still some of that, but like, it seems like he's kind of done a 180 that now, like, it's, instead of attacking Biden the way that he attacked Hillary, as being too cushy with the 1%, he's trying to say that Biden, like, that he's a communist.
Yeah, exactly. And right. Shoot, I totally forget my point.
Well, he's a wrecking ball. And in many ways, he can make an argument that he did drain the swamp, because we have lost faith in the entire swamp. It doesn't matter. We know what the truth is, that he's looting the swamp. But if you're a voter and you're angry, he has kept his promise of destroying this. He's destroyed everything. He's destroyed the FBI. He destroyed the Justice Department, the EPA, everything, the CDC. He didn't just drain the swamp. He took a wrecking ball to it. And granted, he's making money off of it. But if you're angry, if you're facing eviction, if you're out of work, if you're without health care and you don't see Joe Biden offering you a solution, F everybody, take a wrecking ball to all of it.
Yeah, it's a great point because, and it goes back to the point you made about how Biden needs to make his case. Why is he not out every day saying, where are the second stimulus checks? Where are the second $1,200 payments? Where is the eviction moratorium? Where is the, unemployment benefits? Why are we reducing them when people still can't get jobs? I mean, it's the biggest no-brainer ever, but partly that's because would simultaneously expose the weakness and terrible negotiation tactics of Pelosi and Schumer, but it's a no-brainer politically, and that is such a small piece of ground to cede for the overall picture of winning. I
spent 30 years working in Hollywood. Lying is just good manners. It's just good manners to lie to somebody. And the least you can do as a politician is lie to me, make promises that you can't keep. Why is Joe or Amy Klobuchar or Kamala being pragmatic? Why is like, marry me, honey? We'll lose interest romantically eventually, and I'll be a bad father. I'm going to be upfront with you. I'm a bad, and I don't shower every day, and I don't shave. I want to be upfront with you. You're not going to be happy, but you know what? When we die, we won't owe the credit card company anything. Will you marry me? Lie.
Which is an ironic example because one of Joe Biden's legislative accomplishments was making it harder for people to not owe money to the credit card companies. Right? Like that was that's the bankruptcy bill, right? That was
full circle, exactly.
Yeah, for sure.
It's transactional in Washington, except for the voters. They're always asking me for $5, and I write back. They don't answer. Okay, I'm going to give you $5. How much do I get back in return when you're in office? I want $10. Show me how you got me to. That's how we have to look at it.
All right. Well, on that inspiring note, thank you, David. So I really appreciate it.
I cleaned up for this. That's it. I'm kidding.
Yeah, I could tell you did a great job of cleaning.
Thank you.
That's very impressive.
I know the TV on the floor.
That is the fly in the ointment, right? Otherwise, that is just impeccable.
Perfect is the enemy of good, and never forget that. Thank you.
Yeah. If you're listening to this as a podcast, David Feldman, he has a very well kept room, right? There's a TV on the floor, but otherwise, like there's not a speck of dust to be seen. Very impressive. But you should listen to the David Feldman show, which is actually twice a week. That's that comes out.
Yeah, it's Tuesdays and Fridays, and it drops at 3 a.m. Each episode is only 8 hours. So
okay, that's good. That's good. So yeah, thank you very much, David. Really appreciate you coming on. Talk to you very, very soon. So going to bring on Nando Villa.
There we go.
All right, Nando, you're muted.
Doing like the old man thing. How about now?
Yeah, good.
Okay. I'm doing like the old man thing, like where I'm talking on the Zoom, even though I'm muted. What's up, guys?
Hey.
Emma, it's good to see you.
Yeah, good to see you too.
It's fun to be on with two fellow guests of the Let's Pot It Out Entourage podcast.
Oh, exactly. I thought you were going frequent TMBS guests, but sure, yeah. Well,
But this was I think the highlight for both me and Emma, like of anything that we've done, right? Okay, been on TBS, that's nice, right?
It's nice, it's good.
That's it's yeah, right. Like it's okay, right? It's a thing you can do, right? But like really, what you got to call your mom to brag about is going on Let's Pot It Out, which is a Entourage rewatch podcast that Nando and gotta remind me, Miguel
Tamayo
have been doing since the beginning of the pandemic, and as somebody who spent way too much time several years back watching Entourage, it's been a really pleasure to revisit that.
I think I was a little too cruel about the show. I didn't realize like the full podcast was just devoted to Entourage. Like I thought that might have been something fun that was just being done, but no, it's an Entourage podcast.
No, Emma, I think no offense to you, Ben. I think Emma, you were the best guest we had.
Oh, wow, thank you.
It was you were spectacular, but thanks for having me on. I was listening to Dave Feldman talk about like how polite it is to lie to you, and there's this thing in the Washington media, which is a similar thing that happens in the sports media, which drives me crazy, in which the media enforces lying. Like the biggest sin you can commit in Washington and in sports, like as if you're an athlete, is to say what's on your mind and tell the truth. Like when you tell the truth on something, like the sports pundits and the sports writers like kill you for it, even though they should be doing the opposite. They should be begging more athletes to tell them the truth because it's more interesting. It gives them more content. But what they really want is for them to, kind of just say like the cliche of giving 110% every game. And it's all about my teammates. It's all about winning. I don't actually care about how many receptions I've had or how many receiving yards I had in this game. As long as we win, like as soon as the athlete just says what they actually believe, the pundits like jump down their throat. And similarly in Washington, when a politician says what they actually believe or the truth, the pundits jump down their throat. And it's like, no, we should be rewarding that. But it's just like this weird kind of kabuki thing that goes on.
Well, which goes back to what we were talking about with Feldman, right? Which is that this is a big part of the Trump appeal, that even though obviously, he does lie all the time, whatever, but like he's super unfiltered in a way that gives the impression that anything that he says, he must really think because he's telling you everything that crosses his mind.
Have you seen this like guy, Daniel Dale on CNN, who's like the libs love these days? And he goes on
the fast-talking fact checker.
He's the fast-talking fact checker.
Ben Shapiro for libs.
Yes, exactly. He's the fast-talking fact checker. He's got the facts. Boom, 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 gunslinger. And, the libs love him because he's like, oh my God, this latest Trump thing was a tsunami of lies. And then he goes, blah, 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 through all the lies. The thing is, when you're just counting up Trump's lies, like in a weird way, Trump is true to himself, which is a central honesty. Whereas, when Hillary Clinton said, I'm going to put something like, I'm going to put working families first. Like Daniel Dale can't fact check that, but everyone who knows Hillary Clinton and what she's about knows that that's a lie, that she's not being true to herself. Right. So there's like a central lie to some of these like kind of establishment Democratic politicians and even some establishment Republican politicians that everyone kind of senses, even if what the words that are coming out of their mouth cannot be fact checked as quote unquote lies.
No,
right?
No, it's totally true. And I think also someone who I think is really smart was making the point why he thinks Trump's going to win again. And he was saying that it's the amount of lying in Washington has become so quotidian and people have become so used to it really that they can't see what's what. And so even material conditions aren't being connected to politics in the way that they used to be. So I was saying, how could Trump really win again when material conditions are so bad, when we're in an economic depression and there's mass unemployment and there's, protests in the streets, all of that. But when politicians lying and everything is so muddied and the Democratic Party hasn't made their case as an opposition party to say, oh, this is how things could be different, then how can you make the connection between the leader of the country and how you're literally feeling? Like, that's been such a huge failure of the Democratic Party, is being like, no, the reason that you don't have any savings anymore are because of these policies. Here's what we do differently, because they wouldn't do much differently. But that's the point, right? Is there's been no factual making of the case, because it's all this one big lie. And so I don't know if people are making that connection anymore. That's what would do Biden in, I think. If we're that far gone, I don't know.
Yeah, right. And I mean, we might be. I mean, I think that, Biden is ahead, and Biden is ahead in all the swing states, and he's doing better than Hillary was at this point. That's all true, right? But it's also true that that the election's not happening, for another month and a half, and that the pandemic really limits your ability to canvass in a normal way. And I don't know, right? Like, I think the Republican base is probably better at motivating itself to go out to the polls. So I think it's still very, very losable, right? Like, if I had to bet, sure, right? I would say, yeah, right. Obviously, Biden's probably going to win, right? But I think there's also some really weird overconfidence about that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, these latest rasher stories, and apologies if you guys already spoke about it, but just the complete and utter even attempt to campaign, this reporter for Time Magazine that was like, went out looking for the field office in Michigan, the Biden field office in Michigan, and they kept on kind of lying to him. And he's like, no, but just give me the address. I'll go there and I'll show up. And they're like, well, what do you mean by field office? And it's like, well, do you have anyone on the ground? It's like, what do you mean by on the ground? Like, it was just like this kind of bizarre, like almost metaphysical debate that he's having with the Biden campaign of like, what does it really mean to campaign? And they're just not even trying. It's like they're playing prevent defense in the first quarter is like what it feels like to me. And that typically is a recipe for disaster. I mean, I don't know, they might limp across the finish line, but it's going to be, they're going to cut it as close as it possibly can get. Despite the fact that it's like, Trump has like historical negatives, like historical weakness, the opportunity to flip to an incumbent, which is rare in American politics, like couldn't be riper. Like any kind of halfway decent campaign should blow him out of the water. But they're going to make it close. Yeah, but I do think that the larger point too, though, is like the appearance of truth telling isn't resonating as truth telling much anymore, and I think that is key. Because people now just see him as a liar. I mean, and I know libs want to say everything's the silver bullet, like this new Woodward thing. Oh my God, no. But it is another data point that I think has accumulated over time. Nothing's a silver bullet with this guy, right? He's like Teflon. But there are Teflon some things That's exactly what they said about Reagan. Oh yeah? Yeah, well, Teflon Ron. There we go.
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
I saw you say, Nando, on the Jacobin Weekends show that you've been reading
That's why I'm sounding smart right now. I've been reading with Pearlstein.
Yeah, Reaganland. I have been very slowly listening to the Audible version of that, like one dog walk at a time or whatever. So I think I'm still in 1979. I'm going to be done with the book in like 10 years. But yeah, right. I mean, like people did say that about Reagan. Kind of correctly, right? Because he did survive a lot of very weird scandals all the time.
Yeah. Those books, they're both liberals, but the Robert Caro books on Lyndon Johnson and the Rick Pearlstein book on basically the rise of the modern American right, those series of books, like everything you need to know about American politics is probably like in those books in some way, shape or form. Like the feeling that you get reading. Tell me, Nando, I'm writing it down. All the Rick Pearlstein books. Rick Pearlstein. Okay. Yeah. Reaganland, Nixonland. Before the Storm. There's the Invisible Bridge. And then the Robert Caro, Caro, all his books on Lyndon Johnson, plus the Power Broker as well, because that's separate but also amazing. Amazing things to read for everyone in the audience. But the point that I find so interesting about all of Rick Pearlstein's books is just like how the fault lines in the culture war kind of were created and how remarkably similar they are to today. How little they've changed. And this is something that Matt Taibbi talks about a lot, where it's like every single emergency kind of seems like this hair on fire emergency now. But when you read those books, you see like this is the same pattern, the same kind of culture war that we're fighting and going crazy over were present in the 1970s and even in the late 60s. It just really gives you like a sense of perspective, which is in a way kind of comforting, but also, it makes it seem like, how do we break out of this if it's been going on for 40 years?
Yeah, absolutely. That was very insightful. But before Emma has to go, and I want to talk to you about Latin America, I do have one favor to ask, Nando. Could you repeat what you just said, but do it in the voice that you do when you're doing Vince's lines from Entourage in the podcast?
Yeah. Okay. So, if I was talking to this chick and she was like, "Hey, do you know anything about American politics?" And I was like, "Hey, no, I don't." I was like, "What books can I read?" And so I read Rick Pearlstein's books about American politics, and I was like, "Hey, now I know everything about politics, man." Like Ronald Reagan, I thought he was cool, but he's not that cool. That's my Vince.
The charisma of someone who lands multiple big roles in Hollywood.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. All right, guys, I got something else to do. See you later.
Later, Emma.
Yeah,
right,
I'm doing
so
a
much,
thing
Emma.
for TYT at Twitch. I don't even know what the hell that is, but I got to do it. So if anyone
you're
wants
doing
to
the movie watch?
Yeah, if anyone wants to watch me watch not Entourage. If anyone wants to watch me watch I think it's going to be Inception, based on what I've heard that they voted for me. So I'm going to
blow your mind, man.
Yeah, man, my mind's going to melt everywhere. It's going to explode on camera. If you want to watch that, go to my Twitter. I don't know. It's somewhere. I'm great at promotion.
Yeah.
Thanks, Ben. Thanks, Nando.
All right, thank you so much,
See
Emma.
See you guys.
All right, see you. All right, that was Emma Viglund from the Young
One of the best.
Yes,
Lovely,
absolutely.
lovely person.
Very much so. And yes, you should listen to her talk about the episode of Entourage where the guys go to Sundance.
Yes.
It's good stuff, and also I thought that was very brave of you bringing a girl on the show.
I know, it's crazy. Ooh, I was really nervous. I don't know how you do it.
But we've got talking to Nando Villa, who besides the Entourage podcast does a bunch of other stuff, including the Jacobin Weekends show, which I was just watching earlier, and is always very insightful about this stuff. And he has and we were just talking about the American election, and want to kind of switch gears a little bit and talk about Latin America. Although it's worth kind of lingering on the connection for a minute here, because we were just talking about the election, and I think that there's like something that's a little frustrating sometimes if you're around certain kinds of progressive media. That people tend often to talk about the election, electoral politics, what you should think about Biden, Trump, in one of two ways that both seem pretty unhelpful, right? One is to say there's no difference. It's not even harm reduction. It's actually better if Trump wins, because that's only 4 more years, and then you can get your magic intervention where you get somebody like Bernie Sanders, whereas with Biden, it's going to be 8 years, which I've always thought was a bizarre argument because elections happen every 4 years. And frankly, I doubt that Biden has 2 terms in him. And also one of the reasons that Biden won the Democratic primary was because primary voters have this deep longing to go back to normal after 4 years of Trump. And I can't even imagine how much stronger that would be after 8 years, right? I think a Bernie-like figure would be destroyed, right? Would have a much harder time, right? In 2024, after 8 years of Trump. I think that'd be very, very good for the centrists. But that's one frustrating way people talk about it. The other frustrating way that people talk about it is the sort of progressives for Biden kind of version, where you do the opposite thing and you say, well, Biden's not perfect, right? The Democrats aren't perfect. But I mean, they're pretty good. It's pretty close to what we want. And of course, that's also complete nonsense, right? So just as one small example of that, look at the previous Democratic nominee, Hillary Clinton, when she was Secretary of State. She was there while there was a coup against the elected government in Honduras, and she bragged in the first edition of her book about how she had intervened to stop the elected president of Honduras, who of course she referred to as a left-wing strongman, from coming back to power.
That's what I call myself, a left-wing strongman, you know. But you know, and it's the libs do this thing where that's very annoying, where it's like, well, how could we have known? You know, like he did do some bad things. You know, we couldn't know what was going to happen. But like in Latin America at the time, basically universal condemnation of the coup in Honduras. Like the United States was alone in the Western Hemisphere and its support for the coup in Honduras. There was like, you know, every single government in the region was essentially opposed to this because they saw the game perfectly clear. And, you know, what's happened since in Honduras is like just never discussed here. I mean, you see some things about in the media these days about how bad the situation is in Nicaragua, but obviously Nicaragua was an official enemy. The situation in Honduras is much worse, but you never hear about it because they're an official ally. Right. Because the government that came in after Zelaya, who was the left-wing strongman of Hillary Clinton's nightmares, was deposed, has been just like a, you know, both an authoritarian and neoliberal nightmare in terms of cutting social services, creating a huge social crisis. The president isn't being investigated for ties to drug cartels, you know, like he's literally in bed with the drug cartels. So, that's
just as a one of many examples of what the situation has been there. Like, so I was looking at this thing, the Garifuna community. I might be mispronouncing that. My apologies if I am. Who are a black tribe. It's not technically indigenous to Honduras, but have settled there and created a community. Have been under attack, and there's a U.S. company that's trying to develop their land into a resort. There's an article about this. I'll put the link in the show notes. But 5 leaders of the community leading protests against the development were disappeared, right? And it's unclear if we're talking about police or military or you know, private thugs maybe hired by the company. But one way or the other, I don't think that in Honduras right now anybody is going to be held accountable for this.
No, and again, remember like the huge caravan that everyone was panicking about, the Central American caravan that was like a couple years ago was one of the panics at the time. Everyone's forgot about it. Most of those people were coming from Honduras. You know,
yeah. And Hillary Clinton, you know, scored some points about how tough she was by saying that they should send them back. After
send them back, it's amazing. It's amazing. The Clinton rebrand into like woke kind of, you know, not going to throw POC under the bus and all that stuff, like is just mind numbing. Like, it really is just mind numbing. Like, just listen to her words. Like, don't like project, you know, or her Twitter feed, you know, saying like, what does intersectionality mean to you in 3 emojis or less or whatever. You know, like just listen to her actual words. She's telling you.
Perfect Hillary tweet, but yes.
Yeah. That was a real Hillary tweet.
No, that was a real one.
Yeah. Awesome. Oh, yeah. In the 2016 election, that was a real Hillary tweet.
That's amazing, right? And again, that is the thing. I think what you said earlier is exactly right? I remember that there was this thing that like some libs were pushing in 2016 about how there was like that if you looked at the PolitiFact archives, then the percentage of things that Hillary had said that were lies was actually lower than a lot of other politicians. And okay, one, the stats nerd point is actually that's statistically meaningless because it's not randomized. But like the more important point, right, is that it's just weird nonsense because you're ignoring the fundamental dishonesty, which can't be fact checked, right? Which is pretending that you now stand for things that there are decades of evidence from your previous career that you don't, right? You know, that like clearly, you know, that's, I mean, whatever. I mean, Hillary Clinton is yesterday's news, but I mean, if you looked at her entire career, it's a very poor fit with that. And I guess Biden, at least, you know, isn't opening himself to as much of a dishonesty charge because he's not pretending very hard to have changed.
He's not pretending to be woke.
Yeah, right. Which is something. But he's certainly not bragging anymore about how he wrote the crime bill, right? Which he used to. But we talked about Honduras, right? And of course, the coup there is, let's see, I want to say this is 2012. Is that right, around there?
2009.
2009. Okay, that's right. Sorry. But there was a very, very recent, in fact, multiple very recent attempts at right-wing coups in Venezuela, and in fact, I think there's some pretty recent developments there.
Yeah, there was the Venezuelan government arrested an American mercenary, essentially in Venezuela, kind of near some of the oil refineries, with a bunch of weapons on him and cash. Just normal behavior. And
Sure.
of course,
we've all had a weekend where we don't,
Yeah, I mean, it's fun, spring break, dude. It just
things get a little
crazy.
out of hand, and then you
picked up, do little drugs. Yeah, it's
end up by an oil refinery in Venezuela with a bunch of weapons. Yeah, sure. Yeah, probably doesn't mean anything.
No, well, the Trump administration, through their special envoy to Venezuela, a man named Elliot Abrams, great little character in late
circle
season
back
America.
to him in a minute.
Yeah, we're going to circle back to him. But Elliot Abrams denied all, any U.S. involvement in that one. This was just last week. Of course, there was earlier in this year the hilarious Jordan Goudreau coup attempt in Venezuela, which went so sideways that they captured 3 American mercenaries who had their passports on them as they were trying to overthrow the Maduro regime. I mean, this makes the Bay of Pigs look like a James Bond, or a Jason Bourne operation. It's just they don't have. They're not as good anymore at doing it as they used to be. They don't have
that's right.
Stomach
that's
for
right.
it.
Which by the way, something that we have in common is that we both used to live in Miami.
That's true.
And so I would expect you appreciated it when Donald Trump recently claimed to have received the Bay of Pigs award from the Cuban
funniest
community.
thing. It's one of the funniest things I've ever seen. That and him claiming that November Rain was the greatest music video of all time, and making Sarah Huckabee Sanders watch it to prove his point.
And that's not a short video.
That's a 9-minute long video. And he's not exactly wrong about it. But the Bay of Pigs Award is one of the funniest things.
I like Guns N' Roses, but yes, that's the. But the Bay of Pigs Award is fantastic, amazing. Right? Because of course, recent U.S. policy in Venezuela would actually objectively deserve the Bay of Pigs Award.
Yes, 100%. Maybe they saw that and gave it to him. But I would love an oral history of that tweet, or some sort where did the thought get into his, someone must have told him that he won the Bay of Pigs Award, or did he imagine it? Because that award doesn't exist. Obviously, because it's not a real thing.
Why would they name an award after the Bay of Pigs?
Why would they? Yeah. But what happened? What would happen there? But I mean, having lived in Miami, just how dominated it is, both by obviously the Cuban exile community, but also now the Venezuelan quote unquote exile community, even though they're they're not exactly exiles, just how prevalent they are in Miami society, how much power they have. They really run the show there. In many ways, it's kind of a remarkable thing. But yeah, I mean, in Miami, the Venezuelan diaspora is 100% on board with whatever it takes. Coup d'etat, Trump. If they'll frequently say something I don't like Trump, but if he does something to off Maduro, I'll be happy.
Yeah, that's right. That's the moderate thing, to say. As a right wing, Cuban or Venezuelan exile, that's well, of course I don't like Trump, right? Of course that's bad, right? I remember back when I was still living in Michigan, it's before Miami, but in my master's program, there's a graduate student there who was Haitian, and everybody was sitting around talking about how much they hated George W. Bush, right? As liberal academic types will, right? And he was agreeing with everything everybody said, but then he said, "Oh yeah, but on the other hand, right?
Aristide, yeah.
And at least Bush saved my country," by which he meant that he'd sent the Marines to kidnap the elected president, Jean-Bertrand Aristide, and take him out of the country in collaboration with local death squads.
It's, you know, I get so frustrated talking to people because there's this tendency on, even with some very left-wing people, when dealing with something like the situation in Venezuela, to feel the need to like constantly qualify, caveat that, you know, like, I'm not a big Maduro fan, like he's made mistakes and all that stuff. And it's like, sure, I guess, whatever, you know, like the like, let's focus on what we, you know, have sort of any agency over, and understand the context that, like, you know, Hugo Chavez was elected to the presidency. The United States participated in a coup, not particularly, you know, coy about it, in 2002, actually removed him from power for a few days. It wasn't until the Venezuelan population rose up in defiance of the coup that it all fell apart. Then the United States helped the Venezuelan kind of elites do like essentially like a capital strike, like a boss's strike, like a lockout, I guess it's called, you know, at the which to basically harm the Venezuelan economy. And now the United States is imposed.
There was multiple recall attempts.
Yeah, and then now the United States is imposing an economic embargo, just like it did on Cuba for 50 years. That is absolutely crippling the country. I mean, this idea that like these embargoes are just like a thing that's not that big of a deal. That's like, no one ever considers what that really means, of the largest economy in the world imposing economic sanctions on a smaller, much poorer country. Like, the effects that is.
Yeah, for sure, right? And in the context of Cuba, right, the talking point is always, oh, hey, they can't blame everything on this embargo because they can still trade with the rest of the world, right? You know, just not the United States, as if this were an insignificant thing that the like 500-pound gorilla of countries that is right next door, that would be its obvious natural trading partner, can't trade with it at all, right? And in fact, if you think about how this relates to another frequent right-wing talking point, right, which is that, oh, look at all this medical innovation that happens in the United States. Look at how much, you know, like breakthroughs in medical equipment and stuff happen in the United States, which they always bring up when they're arguing against single payer. Well, put these two together, right? Like, if all this medical equipment, for example, is manufactured in the United States and U.S. companies can't sell to Cuba, what do you think that means about Cuba?
Right. Yeah, and you know, at the end of the day, for Cuba, for all its problems and whatever, you know, if you're a gun to my head and you're picking like a random country to have to be born in the Caribbean, you know, like say you're getting chosen like randomly born in Haiti, randomly born in Puerto Rico. I mean, I guess you can say you were forced to stay in Puerto Rico, like you can't emigrate to the United States. Or Cuba, like you're taking Cuba every time. Like the quality of life in Cuba is objectively higher than in any of those island nations. You know, not counting Puerto Ricans who can come to the United States. I mean, the Puerto Ricans that stay there, you know, like look at what happened after Hurricane Maria. You know, you don't hear the same thing happen when Cuba gets hit by a hurricane, because it happens all the time.
And they have one of the best, well, probably the best, like hurricane evacuation and control system in the world, right? That like it's unreal, right? The person from your local, you know, Committee for the Defense of Revolution, you know, will show up and say, okay, here's your spot, right? You know, for the shelter up in the mountains, right? You know, and you go up there, they take your fridge to a safe place, so your fridge isn't damaged in the hurricane. You can take your household pets with you. And people pretty much do not die in hurricanes in Cuba. Right? Even though it happens all the time, right? And you know, Haiti, for example, obviously is absolutely devastated, you know, the human consequences when hurricanes come through. And of course, the U.S., right, is not nearly as good as Cuba is at this, right? Like that famously, Fidel Castro offered to send Cuban doctors and supplies to help New Orleans after Hurricane Katrina. And obviously the Bush administration said no, right? But like that's, you know, just the same way that there are Cuban doctors who are in various countries right now helping with the COVID crisis. And, you know, relative to being this very small, very poor country, can't get a lot of medical equipment, that's sold in the U.S., et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, right? Like their track record handling COVID has been pretty good, right? Like, I'm sure there are other countries, first world countries, not the U.S., that you'd rather be dealing with the COVID crisis in, than Cuba, right? But like certainly, by the standards of third world, I mean, they've been killing it.
Yeah, no, absolutely, and it's just. And people don't realize, this is something that Daniel Bressner talks about a lot, is like just people don't realize how powerful the United States is, even in its kind of like this like kind of weird late empire phase where like no one really has a stomach for it anymore, and like no one in the population actually believes anymore. Like you don't really see that many true believers anymore. You're seeing kind of like, take the money and run type people, but not really like the sort of true believers that, you and I are old enough to remember like the late 90s and stuff, the triumphalism, the belief that like inherent belief in America is just like the superior. Like no one really believes it. No one makes that case anymore. Like when the politicians say it's like not landing the same way as it used to. Yeah, I mean, this idea that like the United States is because of that weak is laughable. Like, I mean, the United States military is still like unbelievably powerful, even if it's like run by bumbling idiots, but it's still like just like again, like you said, the 500-pound gorilla in the room. And economically, as we're struggling here within the United States, and like the majority of people like in the United States are kind of downwardly mobile and struggling, it still is this like overwhelming power in dictating global economic affairs, certainly in the Western Hemisphere. So
speaking of which, right? Yeah. So we're going through the Western Hemisphere, right? We talked a little bit about Honduras. We talked a little bit about Venezuela. The obvious case in terms of recent, right, U.S. supported coups, because I think a lot of times there's this sort of way that apologists for U.S. imperialism will kind of try to classify like the greatest hits. Your Guatemala in 1954, your Chile in 1973, these things, support for the Contra death squads in Nicaragua in the 80s, and say, okay, well that was bad, sure, right? Like it's not.
That was
ideal.
Cold War stuff. We made some mistakes, but like we were fighting the Soviet Union.
We were just getting a little overzealous in our efforts to fight the Soviet Union in the Cold War. So, but it doesn't really represent anything like more significant about that, right? About the basic relationship between the United States and Latin America. But all the cases we've been talking about just now have been very recent, right? In fact, actually, before we get to Bolivia, I do want to make sure this doesn't get lost, right? Because we were talking about Reagan earlier, and the continuity is striking, right? So Elliot Abrams was
the same people. Yeah.
Well, actually, here, tell us about Elliot Abrams, because again, this is a figure. It's like somebody who is, I don't know. I guess I'm dating myself here, but it's like a beloved character from Cheers showing up on Frasier, right? That like it's that kind of thing for the history of U.S. imperialist meddling in Latin America.
Yeah, I mean, Elliot Abrams was kind of, I don't even know what his official title must have been in the Reagan administration. It was probably something vague, kind of like special envoy to Central America or whatever, but he was basically in charge of U.S. policy in Central America in the time of the Dirty Wars, which is very poorly understood here. I mean, when you tell people the amount of people that were killed in the Central American Dirty Wars, like their jaw just, I mean, it's like talking about like 500,000 people probably that were killed, if not more. And some of these countries are not very big. These are very, very small countries. El Salvador and Nicaragua. Very, very countries. And Elliot Abrams was basically the man giving cover to the U.S.-sponsored death squads in Guatemala and El Salvador and places like this that received U.S. funding, training, all manner of things to basically disappear the left. That's basically, that was their job. It was to make sure the left disappeared by any means necessary. If you read Vincent Bevins' great book, The Jakarta Method, I mean, this was a policy kind of that was invented in Indonesia in 1965 and taken throughout the world, but especially in Latin America, is that if you disappear the people rather than kill them publicly, you kind of have the effect of, not to use like an overused term, but like gaslighting the population,
Right.
because they don't know what happened. Like they just never really know what happened to them. You always kind of hold out hope. And Elliot Abrams was like the butcher of Central America. Like, I mean, he was the guy in charge of like taking some dopey New York Times reporter, and telling him like, nope, yeah, these guys are freedom fighters, and and the New York Times reporter's like, well, checks out, like, and then as the as the quote unquote liberal media is wont to do, whenever like some NatSec ghoul just tells them like, nope, actually what we're doing is actually good, that stuff that you're hearing, all communist propaganda. Like, okay, well, and now he's back. He's back in black, baby. Like you said, the continuity. This is not ancient history. This is U.S. policy that transcends administrations, transcends partisan lines.
So tell us a little bit about this, right? What's his role been in the last year?
So he's the special envoy to Venezuela. And I mean, basically what it's been is to coordinate efforts with the Venezuelan opposition, which is this kind of comically inept, fractured, and, but also like kind of very, very extreme and potentially violent faction, very well funded by like the Venezuelan elite, both in...
By the way, I do have to say, right, I love, I think one of the revelations in Steve Bannon's book is that Donald Trump had referred to Juan Guaido, right, the guy who attempted to install as president of Venezuela, as the Pete Buttigieg.
The Beto O'Rourke.
Oh, sorry. Actually, that's even better. Yes, the Beto O'Rourke.
Yeah, it is better because it's more accurate. Like he is, like Pete Buttigieg is like a psychopath who, like, you can imagine being, the next like bigwig. Maybe he's not going to become president, but he'll be like some major power player in Democratic Party politics. He is a true psychopath that is going to like get there some way, shape, or form. Like he's going to replace Neeratan in a cap or something, and then be the chief of staff for Kamala Harris, whatever. Beto O'Rourke is a loser. Like he's just like a dopey kind of Gen X dumbass.
People like he had a lot of goodwill, right, for progressives when he was running against Ted Cruz. And then he was clearly going through some kind of identity crisis because now he wasn't running for anything. And then he felt lost and disoriented. So he tried to run for president, and he did a lot of like standing on tables and tree stumps and stuff. But like, it got sadder and sadder as it went on, which is not a bad analogy. In fact, for Juan Guaido spending like actually, whatever you think, as you're saying, right, about Maduro and anything that that government in Venezuela might have done wrong, or mistakes they might have made, or any of that stuff, right? There was a hilarious disconnect because there was a long time when Juan Guaido was doing things like going around to military bases saying, "I'm the real president, follow me." Everybody just kind of laughed at him and ignored him, and he wasn't even being arrested, by this government, which was honestly a propaganda masterstroke by the Maduro government, because it's like, hey, you know what's gonna like the disconnect is gonna be so amazing here, right? Because they're talking about how we're Stalin, and like we're just gonna let this idiot like walk around, like go around and like tour military bases.
The fact that this guy's not been executed yet, like what the hell? Juan Guaido goes around with a full-time paid astrologer.
Awesome.
Like he has a guy on staff, and that's his job, to be his as an astrologer or astrologist. I don't know, but yeah. Somehow he's running around this like authoritarian government country trying to overthrow the government, and he's still not in jail or executed. But somebody
in chat says there are no attempts to get mercenaries to support Beto, but if there were, he would find a way to fuck it up. I mean, that's the point.
Right, totally. But it's interesting, because and this is something that Mike Brooks and I used to talk a lot about, but because there's there's a lot of talk about like the authoritarianism of people like Maduro or Chavez or Castro, a figure like Chavez, who's on the left but came through the military, has been able, in many ways, the Venezuelan regime has been able to withstand sort of the basically the attacks from the United States and its own kind of internal elites, mostly because of their support of the support from the armed forces, mostly because they come from the armed forces. Like, this is not something we would want to happen, but like, it's just a reality that the Venezuelan military still supports Maduro, and that is why he will be in power. And
Right.
Castro, fought, like, was a military, was in a way, he didn't come from like an official, like regular army the way Chavez did, but he was a military guy, commander in the field, and that allowed him to enjoy kind of the support of the armed forces, whereas someone like Lula in Brazil or Evo Morales in Bolivia do not come from the military, so they're always going to be vulnerable to the right-wing authoritarian coup.
Yeah, right, exactly. So let's talk about Bolivia, because this was pretty recent, right? It happened at the beginning of the year, and when it happened, right, what you were saying earlier about Elliot Abrams talking to NatSec reporters from the New York Times is exactly what played out with the Bolivia situation. That the Organization of American States said this election, where Morales won, wasn't a legitimate election, which, by the way, they didn't even claim at the time to have any particularly direct evidence for. It was just this kind of like Nate Silvery, like, let's extrapolate backwards from the numbers. And, it's like, this seems unlikely, right, that it would play out this way. So they said it was an illegitimate election. And then the military got involved, and Morales is deposed. And there was like a month there where the completely like centrist, liberal, like reasonable person view was, well, we really shouldn't even talk about this as a coup, because Morales, well, he was a strong man, right? He had he had authoritarian.
He was a very
tendencies.
strong man. He had the big dick energy, very strong man. No, like, I'll never forget this. This tweet is like implanted in my brain. I just looked it up because I had to like double check. And the Clara Jeffrey, the editor of Mother Jones magazine at this time, tweeted out, she quote tweeted the New York Times story about this. And she goes, "Dicey times in Bolivia. Morales had taken several end runs around a democratic process, but let's hope it's a democratic process that succeeds him." And that is just like liberal brain in America, like what I was talking about, like, well, I don't know, like maybe something better will happen. It's just like,
no, that is amazing. That's like, they have that's like, well, I'm a little bit alarmed that Jack the Ripper is still at large, but let's hope that he stops killing people.
Right. Yeah. Maybe he will. Maybe we can reason with him, and it's hilarious because what Morales was accused of was not even of stealing the election. He was accused of not winning the election by a big enough margin to avoid a runoff. Like, no one disputes that he got more votes than the other guy. Like, that was never in dispute. The question is whether did he win by a margin of 10%, which would prevent a runoff from happening. That small kind of thing was proven to be bullshit. The OAS, which is obviously like no friend to the left. Like, even the New York Times said that the OAS's report was bullshit. And since big time whoopsie. Since then, the Janine Áñez, who's this like far right sort of Christian fundamentalist who took power since then and has been promising elections, but keeps on kind of delaying them because despite the fact that Evo Morales is, outside of the country, basically living in exile, his party, the MAS party, is still leading in all the polls. So if they had the election, it looks likely that the MAS candidate would win. So therefore, they keep on delaying the elections. And the latest thing is that now she's dropping out of the elections. She's pulling, to cite an American context, she's pulling basically a Pete Buttigieg because, like I said, in the Bolivian system, you need to win by 40, like you need to get at least 40% of the vote and win by 10% at least to avoid a runoff. It looks like the MAS candidate, the Evo Morales candidate, will get that in the first round because the sort of right-wing opposition is fractured. So what they're trying to do is like she's going to drop out. They're all going to throw their support behind the other guy, and hopefully that unites the right for them so that they can take the election at least to a runoff, in which case then all the right-wing forces will consolidate and stop the Mas party. But that's basically what's going on in Bolivia. You know, dicey times indeed for Clara Jeffrey.
Yeah, well, right. And the excuse has been that they can't have the election because of the coronavirus,
COVID,
right? You know, that's like, which really, I mean, is such a golden thing for anybody who's in that space, right? I mean, that was like right after COVID started. You know, Viktor Orban's party in Hungary did this thing about how, well, because this is an emergency, because of the pandemic now, you know, like, you know, he's the dictator and he can just do things by decree, and, you know, because like this is just what you have to do, you know, for public health. And, you know, even Trump kind of took a stab at it, right? I mean, it was half-hearted in the way that Trump tends to be, right? You know, he doesn't follow through. It's really my biggest objection to Trump, the lack of follow through. But
no follow through.
But he tweeted out that little trial balloon. It's like, oh, COVID, yeah, maybe we should delay the election, you know, like. But in Bolivia, that's actually happened multiple times, right? Because they just care so damn much about the COVID response,
protecting,
even though the actual COVID response has been catastrophic.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Of course. You know, like like you said, it's just liberals. Like I can never know if they're like dumb or dishonest or a combination of both, but like, you know, the taking everything at face value and like not understanding or not remembering what happened like 2 seconds ago. Like, this is not ancient history. You don't need to like go into, you know, some dusty old library in Alexandria or something to find the ancient texts. Like they happen in our lifetime. The tweets are still there. You know, the Clara Jeffrey tweets are still there to own. So yeah, I never know. Like, they just take out all these things at face value. Well, they can't have the election because it's COVID. You know, that makes sense. You know, like
right. And it's no. You don't understand. It's an independent commission that said we can't do this. And I'm sure
the
that
Organization of American States said that the election was fraudulent. You know,
and these are all
like a real organization. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, these are all obviously apolitical bodies, and they. You know, this commission in Bolivia, there obviously wouldn't be any sort of improper pressure on it that's like happening like literally after a military coup and like mass like reprisals, you know, against the left, you know, that happened in the aftermath of that. I mean, it's a very like, I think that a lot of times American liberals, they have this belief. Well, look, I mean, like the starting thing is that they think that they will make themselves look reasonable if they have some sort of like left-wing bogeyman, you know, that they can get points for denouncing. And now, which is obviously like weirdly delusional. I mean, I think it's kind of the same thing. Like, I think it's the same like brain disease as leftists who convince themselves that like just by saying really radical things, we're doing something called moving the Overton window, and then like that'll like trick people into delivering.
Sean McElwee, we're gonna abolish ICE.
Yeah, that's right. Which really he was just saying is 9-dimensional chess to like get some sort of like halfway reform to happen, which is what he now says. And obviously that's been a smashing success, as you can see, because things have gotten like, you know, Trump's immigration policy has really gotten a lot more reasonable in the last couple of years.
And Joe Biden is running on, you know, on immigration. No,
I mean, he actually like said during the primaries, there was a moment when a voter, I believe in it. Well, I don't know, but you know, but somebody asked him like, you know, like one of these like meet and greet things, like go talk to voters back when you could do this, that about, you know, what he would do, you know, to help undocumented immigrants. And he actually told him, look, you know, here, I'm not gonna tell you what you want to hear, basically. And the line he actually said, right, you can go vote for somebody else.
Yeah.
Which is awesome. But yeah, so because because a lot of liberals believe that they'll get reasonableness points if they denounce some sort of
From the reasonableness referee.
Yeah, the unreasonableness
So
referee, which
Yeah.
that's the entire, like the Obama administration was like 8 years of trying to get the attention of the unreasonableness referee. It's like, okay, well, if we nominate Merrick Garland, who the Republicans have praised in the past, and they still don't let it come to a vote, then like the unreasonableness guarantee, like the unreasonableness referee is going to have to give them that yellow card now, right? I mean, like he just can't say he didn't see that. And so because they have this belief, and there's, I think, a lot of the reactions to stuff in Latin America often reflects that, because that's like a very easy way to do it, right? That's like
low stakes.
It's very low stakes, for American politics. You're not going to get any, there's no way that you're going to be, punished by the voters for saying something bad about Maduro or Morales or, Zelaya, from Honduras or any of these people, right? So there's no real downside from their perspective, and they believe it's delusional, right? But they believe that there's going to be this upside, that they're going to win points with the reasonableness referee, which is why actually it was so shocking. Both times actually he ran for president, right? That Bernie Sanders pushed back against that, right? That he actually did do things like talk about how bad the coup to install Pinochet was, when Hillary Clinton said that Henry Kissinger was her friend. There was a debate in Miami where he was asked to.
I was there.
He was confronted with some like devastating old clips of him saying true things about Cuba and
Nicaragua. That was the Nicaragua one. Yeah.
Okay.
The
Yeah.
Sandinistas.
Yes. And he didn't walk it back, which is one of the many reasons. I mean, obviously it's the least of it as far as everything that's like all the consequential reasons why the way that the primary turned out, is a tragedy. But one of the things that I was really hoping for, if Bernie was nominated, after saying all those things, right? After not, right. The Miami debate, the Sandinistas came up, and he didn't walk it back. After the Nevada caucus, right? There was the thing about the true things that he'd said about the Cuban healthcare and literacy efforts, and he didn't walk it back. And so,
which is the same things Obama said, which was also so infuriating.
he did, in Cuba, no less. Yeah. Right. But that's different.
It's different.
Yeah. So if after saying all of that, he had been nominated anyway, like one of the things I was really hoping for was that this would just kind of put to bed the idea that you can't win an election without pandering to the exile communities in South Florida. Which
Obama did it.
Yeah.
Obama won Florida twice, and he even won a majority of voters in Dade County. And some polls, I mean, it's hard to, like, to the extent that you can poll these things, but some polls had him at like a narrow victory amongst Cuban Americans in Miami. And so Obama did it. It's just, I don't know how he did it. I mean, I don't know why he didn't get
he wasn't saying things like Bernie was about this, but it is true that a lot of those people hated him. Like I remember actually when I was voting in 2008, it was one of those things. I voted early to try to avoid the lines, and not only did that not work, but I ended up, like, me and my friends like stood in line all day, waiting to early vote, and it was pretty striking, right? You could tell who's going to win the election because the Democrats like pulled out all the stops, right? The Obama campaign had volunteers there to pass out bottled water to people waiting in line, and there were actually some kind of like B-list actors who were there to like encourage people to stay in line. One of the actresses from Sex and the City was there. I took a picture of her with one of my friends I was voting with.
Oh yeah.
And the McCain campaign was represented by like 5 guys with handmade signs saying things like Cuba got change in 1959. so there was this like weird incompetent attempt at red baiting that didn't go anywhere.
Well, this is the new Lincoln Project tactic. They have some like Cuban American guy. I think he's Cuban American. I don't want to like speak for, but they have this like Hispanic guy on the Lincoln Project, and his new thing is to compare Trump to Castro. He's like, no, actually, Trump is like Castro. You know, and they have a picture of both of them like going like that, and it's like side by side, and like that's how they're owning Trump, is by comparing him to Castro. As if anyone
Good
in
luck with
Miami,
that.
yeah, like as if anyone in Miami is gonna buy that, you know, like no one's gonna buy that. They love him. I've been there. They love him. He's their guy, you know. So yeah, that one's not gonna work. You gotta come at it from a different angle if you want to like Joe Biden.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No question. All right, Nando.
All right, brother.
Thank you so much for coming on. Oh, before you leave, Jeremy asks in the Q&A, what guitars you have on your wall?
I got so the one at the top is this one right here. That's a 1989 Fender Telecaster Thin Line, made in Japan, which I'm very proud of. It's actually these days my favorite one. Sounds amazing. The one in the middle is Fender Stratocaster. That was my first guitar. That's probably a 2000, maybe 1999. That one is a Gretsch Chet Atkins model. And I have a Martin over here. That is my like kind of acoustic go-to. I also have an Epiphone hidden somewhere, another Epiphone hollow body. So yeah, I like guitars, man. I like them. I don't know.
Yeah.
Do you guys play guitar? Griscom, do you play guitar? You play guitar.
Griscom's got a
Yeah,
couple
I play
behind him, I
guitar.
believe.
What do you got back there? What are you packing
I mean,
back
I
there?
don't have my main guitar is actually outside of my balcony right now because I was just playing it. But it's an Epiphone Jumbo
Ooh.
acoustic. Yeah, it's the same model as Jesus Christ, I can't remember his name right now. Anyways, yeah, I got a couple back here. I got a banjo.
The big boys.
Yeah, like a huge ass guy.
Yeah.
Jamie Johnson is who I was thinking about. He plays the exact same guitar, but yeah, I play banjo too. But these guys are just like my mess around guitars. I have like this old ass boy that this was my first guitar, just like an old $100 Ibanez that I still
Hell yeah.
kept around, get repaired every couple of years. You know, you gotta show it some love.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah. You can never get rid of your first love.
All right.
Exactly.
So, I'm talking to Nando Villa, who, Jack and Ben, other media stuff, right? The important thing, right? The thing everybody needs to know is he hosts co-hosts the Entourage Rewatch podcast. Let's Pot It Out. Daniel Bessner was just on there to talk about the episode where they meet the rapper Saigon. What's coming up next?
We got Vince Mancini is the next guest. We recorded it on Friday. I'll edit it, tomorrow maybe, and release it either Monday or Tuesday. And then we got probably the next guest will be T from Champagne Sharks for the season finale of season 2, where Ari leaves the agency. Yeah.
Yeah, good stuff. Speaking of TV rewatching, I should tell people Nando has already agreed to come back sometime in October, November to talk about The Sopranos. We've also got Mike Racine, who's going to come on for that. Maybe one other person. We're still figuring that out. So looking forward to that. Looking forward to talking to you then. Thank you so much, brother.
All right, guys, take it easy.
See you around.
Thanks. All right, joined now by our friend, our comrade, David Griscom, who is here, of course, for another segment of Outlaws and Revolutionaries. My wife and I are in the process of moving, and we're running dangerously low on whiskey right now. But this is the rule, right? When Griscom comes on, you need to switch to whiskey. So I've got like a little bit of Maker's Mark left, so I will drink that.
Not bad. I just finished off this bottle of Four Roses, which is some good stuff. Was my whiskey this week. Yeah, man, you're ready for this? This one, I've been feeling really deeply about this subject, Blaze Foley, lately. I was listening to some of his songs before I came on, starting to get hit with his legend.
Yeah. So I'm excited, right? So Blaze Foley is somebody that, I mean, obviously, the last few weeks, we've been talking about the sort of very well-known titans, of country music, people like Merle Haggard and Johnny Cash. But right now we're going to talk about Blaze Foley, who's somebody you introduced me to.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to know where to start with Blaze, but I'll guess I'll just start here for people who aren't familiar with him. There's a reason you're not familiar with him. Is one, he never really had much commercial success at all during his life. And two, he died tragically, not necessarily young, but around 39. But we'll get to that story in a little. Sorry?
Seems pretty young to me. I just turned 40.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, but he was making music for a long time, and just, I mean, he was one of those people. He was really close to Townes Van Zandt, and that's, I think, why a lot of people know about him, because he was such an important part of so many people's lives in the country music scene, especially the Austin music scene, that people really continued his legacy. And now, when it comes to listening to Blaze Foley, there's only a few tapes that actually still exist and survive today, which obviously adds so much to the legend and the mystique. There's some really great YouTube concerts that you can find online, but they're all really, for the most part, low quality, grainy shots, bad audio. So you really have to, there's a few albums out there that have like pretty decent audio, but you just sort of have to listen through, a lot of stuff that usually annoys people. So if you're a kind of like audiophile and you can't handle like any ambient noise, you might not be able to listen to Blaze Foley. Damn. So yeah, I mean, I guess just starting like, his name wasn't Blaze Foley, as anyone who has a beautiful name like that. It was a stage name. He was born Michael Fuller, and his name, Blaze Foley, came out of, he was trying to play off of Red Foley, who was a pretty popular like television, movie star and country music artist, the kind of guy you'd see on TV back in like the 50s and 60s. And then slowly his name just went from Blue Foley, which was his stage name, until it became Blaze Foley. Famously, like, he wrote the song "If I Needed You," which we talked about last week, that Merle Haggard made very, very popular. And I told you all this story last week about how Merle Haggard said that was one of the greatest country songs he'd ever listened to in his life. And, Blaze Foley kept that in his boot and would pull it out at parties all the time to show people. But here's the thing about Blaze. Not only was he an incredible artist, but he really lived the life of an artist. When he first moved to Austin, he was camping outside of the city, where a lot of other kind of like homeless people or people who weren't able to afford any housing in Austin were living. So he lived in these communities and then would go from couch to couch, house to house. There was a joke about him that, everything that he owned was fixed with duct tape. He constantly was having to pawn his guitar, and he would borrow people like Townes Van Zandt's guitar before he would play a show or a concert or anything like that. He never was really able to play at any of the big clubs in Austin because he'd get kicked out. As Townes Van Zandt said, like, there were two different sides of him that I knew well. One was a kind of gruff, angry guy who would drink too much, and the other one was this really adorable, sweet teddy bear. But before we get into that kind of stuff, it's worth mentioning some of his really phenomenal songs. So there's Clay Pigeons, which is just a beautiful song. People might know that because John Prine made that really popular and famous as well. Already mentioned If I Could Only Fly. But here's just some lyrics from some of his more political songs, because he got like pretty radical and interesting, especially towards the end of his life. So there's a song that's a personal favorite of mine called Oval Room. And you can listen to that now, and it's almost an anti-Trump song, that was written about 30 years ago. And it's about Ronald Reagan. And it says, at the factory, never been so slow. Got a big fort down, 99 to go. Down on the farm, nothing growing there. But the debts they owe and their gray hair. In the desert sand and the jungle deep. He thinks everything is his to keep. He's a real cowboy with his makeup on. He talks to kings and queens on the telephone. He's the president, but I don't care. Whoa. Just like, fun songs like that. The video that I posted on Twitter, the first thing he says is like, you can ask me anything, just don't ask me to vote. He has another song called Election Day, where he's pleading with the policeman, don't take my stuff. It costs me too much money, and it probably ain't enough to get me through Election Day. So he had some pretty radical, politics. for sure. And when his first major album was going to come out, he had intended for 20% of the proceeds from it to go and fund one of the major homeless shelters in Austin. Unfortunately, he wasn't able to make that because in 1989, he was staying at a house with a friend, and he came home after, having a few drinks, and he came back to the house, and he confronted the brother of the person who he was staying with, who he had found out was stealing his own father's welfare checks. And Blaze Foley confronted him, and then the man shot him in the liver twice, and he died shortly after that. And the man who shot him, his own father, tried to testify against him in the murder trial. But basically the defense lawyers made the argument that because this guy was such a drunk, he would not be a credible witness. So there was no, the person was not convicted. But in a kind of fitting and loving way, Blaze Foley's friends, Townes Van Zandt and all these people, they pulled together, he had his casket, and instead of using nails to finish it up, every person at the funeral put a little piece of duct tape to say goodbye to their friend who had their entire life duct taped together. And the last thing I'll mention, as the legend goes, he was really close with Townes Van Zandt. And Townes Van Zandt and Blaze Foley are two people who love to tell stories. So don't just take it with a grain of salt. You got to take it with a shaker. But Townes Van Zandt does say that was not the last time at that funeral that he saw Blaze Foley. As we said earlier, Blaze was always, pawning off his guitars, and Townes and his friends were trying to get his last guitar from the pawn shop. And they realized that the ticket to the pawn shop was buried in the suit. And Townes Van Zandt, allegedly, according to him, went with his friends and dug up Blaze's body about 2 weeks after that. And so that's the I mean, there's so many things to say, but he had such bad luck. He recorded an album, I think, in 1985. The masters he had in his truck, a bunch of robbers came in his truck, stole everything, and they stole his the masters, the cassette tapes that he had. And in his own words, because they were so shiny, they thought they must be worth something. And then the recording company that he was working with was also involved in some illicit activities on the side. So an FBI raid came in and took everything, and they still have in their possession the original Blaze Foley album. I don't know, just a really fascinating guy, really lived his music.
Kind of want to imagine somebody, an agent, listening, they're there late at night, it's let's put this on.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, this unreleased album. He just really was such a wonderful teddy bear, and obviously dealt with a lot of hardship. But it was a really beautiful person. I have one of his records, which I played for you, called The Dog Years, which is an amazing album. It actually just came out in 2016. But they were tapes that his partner and girlfriend at the time basically demanded that he record, and they recorded them in his house. And they're very raw, very beautiful, very much like sitting down on somebody's front porch. But in some of the songs, you can hear his newborn baby crying in the background. I mean, just really live kind of life. A lot of people who do country music, they try to tell stories about themselves, about how country or Southern they are, where Blaze Foley never had to tell any stories regarding that. I mean, he was, such a country music artist, but he really was an artist who suffered for his songwriting. And that was his full-time, passion, even though it never really brought him any money. I love the line. He has a great song called Big Cheeseburgers and Good French Fries, which for the most part is about what you think it is. But he has a line that he says, I think I'm crazy, but that depends. I don't seem that crazy to me.
You sent me a couple of songs. I listened to that one last night. It's good stuff.
Yeah, he's a beautiful, beautiful man. And obviously there's a reason there's a reason he's such a legend. Ethan Hawke has made a movie about him called Blaze, which I think is on Netflix now. I haven't seen it. I was going to watch it, but I figured I wouldn't let that sort of spoil my perspective on him. he's somebody who is like, is amazing for me because, he was shot in 1989 in Bolden, which is in Austin, Bolden Creek. And, just 3 years later, little baby David was being brought home from the hospital about a 2-minute walk from where he was shot. So he's always sort of been a big figure in my imagination because of that. And another thing just to mention, Lucinda Williams wrote the song Drunken Angel. That's about Blaze Foley. Another person we have to do is think about soon is Townes Van Zandt, who I'm sure people know about.
Mm-hmm.
But when Van Zandt first got out of rehab, he was playing a show, and he got up and he just started forgetting the words to his songs. And Blaze was in the audience and just stood up, grabbed his friend by the arm, and just like sang in the microphone the lyrics until Townes could catch his breath and figure out where he was. And then he just went back and sat back in the front row. I don't know. I mean, a beautiful story, but just I think is really the kind of guy that he was too. A really lovely.
That's fantastic. What so somebody was looking to get into Blaze Foley's music, like what's a good place to start? What should they listen to?
I think I love Overroom. I love the Dog Years. The Dog Years are pretty early music. I think depending on how you listen to your music, watching those tapes on YouTube are worthwhile, especially when I sent to you. I mean, he's playing the song where he has like a little flower. Actually, I should mention that. Like he has a little flower like in his cowboy hat that says extraterrestrial on the hat band all the way around. And if you look really closely, he has duct tape holding the cuffs of his suit together. That's definitely, I think, one of the better places to start with. Spotify has Dog Years. It also has a really great album. Make sure I get the name right here. It has a bunch of his stuff that came out recently because there's been such a new revival in interest in Blaze Foley. So the album is Sitting by the Road, which actually has most of these great songs like Big Cheeseburgers, Slow Boat to China, A Cold Cold World, Fat Boy, which is another great song. That's definitely a great place to start. But honestly, the thing is with Blaze, anywhere you jump into, you're going to be rewarded for it because he was an ace picker and a great songwriter.
Nice. Well, thank you so much, David. This is fantastic as always. Do you know yet who you want to do next week?
I'm going to think about it. I'm leaning towards Townes, but let's revisit that soon.
All right. Yeah, sounds good, man. Well, thank you so much. Always a pleasure. Love finishing out episodes this way. So talk to you very soon.
Sounds good. Can't wait.
All right. Thanks, brother.
Bye.
All right. Was David Griscom from Michael Brooks Show doing another segment of Outlaws and Revolutionaries. Before that, talked to David Feldman, who is the host of the David Feldman Show, is also the co-host of the Ralph Nader Radio Hour with somebody who I tremendously admire, even if I don't always agree with his electoral strategy, Ralph Nader. And Emma Viglund from the Young Turks, and Nando Villa from projects ranging from the weekend show he does with Anna Kasparian on Jacobin to Let's Pot It Out, the Entourage Weekend Entourage Rewatch podcast that he started at the beginning of the pandemic. Before I sign off, I just want to take a couple of questions from Q&A. So Shona had brought up the history of socialism in Ireland and Scotland. And I'm less familiar with the Scottish part of that equation, but certainly socialism has been a huge part of the history of Irish republicanism. That we figures like James Connolly, who's one of my favorite Marxist writers, and I think really insightful, really personally heroic person, and somebody who had a lot of good stuff to say about why merely achieving national liberation without founding a socialist republic in which the poor and the downtrodden of the country could be not only have their material needs met, but be empowered and truly free in a different way would eliminate most of the point. If you've ever watched the movie The Wind That Shakes the Barley, well, if you haven't, I would recommend it. But if you have, you might remember a scene in there where there is two of the characters are sitting in a British jail cell, well, in Ireland, but a jail cell. They've been captured by British forces, and they sort of do a unison quote of James Connolly talking about that. It's fantastic. I love that movie. Also, there is a question. Yes, actually, that is true. James Connolly was born in Edinburgh, I believe, but he mostly lived in Ireland, and he was one of the leaders of the uprising in 1916, and he was executed when the British suppressed that uprising. In fact, I believe he was famously taken to the firing squad because he was sick. They just carted his bed out there to shoot him, which is an amazing story, an amazing symbol of the brutality of the British in Ireland. Jeremy asks, what explains the aspect in liberalism that requires the self-flattery and obsession with reasonableness? And I don't know that this is the entire story there, but I think that a big part of it is that a lot of people who have a basically liberal worldview, they have some good impulses, right? That they do correctly see at least some of the things that are wrong with the world, even if their solutions are tepid and insufficient, and they want to improve them, right? They have this basic instinct of liking some sort of social progress, even if they want it to be slow. But the problem is that they don't have a worldview that gives them any conception of class struggle. This goes back to what I was talking about earlier with people thinking that they can do something by quote unquote moving the Overton window. I have an article about this coming out in Jacobin. That no, you can't, right? The analogy when people talk about the Overton window is to the idea of like a negotiation session, right? It's like, oh, well, you want to end up at 8, you should demand 11, right? The problem is you can only demand 11 and have that mean something to the bosses because you have behind you an organization of workers who are prepared to walk off the job if you don't get what you want at the bargaining table. So there's a threat attached to it that actually impacts the capitalist bottom line. And when you're just talking about a rhetorical exercise, what you advocate, nothing similar is true. So there's no, you can scare the bosses into giving you 8 by advocating 11. You can't scare anybody into agreeing with you, which is why the whole concept of moving the Overton window is fundamentally confused. Doesn't mean we shouldn't advocate radical things, but we should do that as part of a strategy for building an organized working class movement that can actually achieve those things. And that is the distinction that I'd make there. So to answer Jeremy's question, I think the reason that liberals end up being obsessed with reasonableness, or one of them, it reflects the same confusion as the Overton window thing, that they think, because they don't have an idea that what happens in the society is dictated by who has power, right? A perspective that's about class struggle, that, you have to organize to take the things that you want. So they think that you can, if you show how reasonable you are, that will just persuade people whose ideology or whose economic interests don't all go along with what you want into doing what you want. And of course, that never works. Dave would like to see the t-shirt. So this is a t-shirt that I got back in the fall of 2015. My wife was still in graduate school. I'd finished my PhD. We'd just gotten back from living in South Korea for a couple of years. Neither of us had an academic job lined up, so I ended up going back to Michigan, substitute teaching for a semester before I got the gig teaching as part-time lecturer at Rutgers back then. So in any case, all that's just background. It was turned out the silver lining of that pretty grim situation was that I got to be in East Lansing, which is where I'm from, during an amazing season right up until the end of Michigan State football. That included a couple of games where MSU won at the last minute, like the last second, when they had no right to win. That it was a total surprise. They just kind of snatched victory from the jaws of defeat. And so this is a T-shirt that I bought specifically to go to a sports bar to watch that game. It says "Beat Michigan." This was before the MSU University of Michigan game that happened in 2015, which was an amazing, just in terms of dramatic structure. That was like a little sports movie in itself, of a game, and watching that at a bar in Lansing with a bunch of Michigan State fans, like as those, especially because like where I grew up in East Lansing, the people who tended to be University of Michigan fans were people whose parents had gone there, who tended to be doctors and lawyers, and people from more working class backgrounds tended to be Michigan State fans. Given my background, I was somewhere in between, but I bled green. I was definitely a Michigan State fan. And so watching at the end of that game, seeing MSU pull it off just at the last second in this way you could not have predicted, and seeing those University of Michigan kids in the stands just shocked, like they just seen somebody shot on the field, was just Italian chef kiss. And again, watching that in this bar full of Michigan State fans in Lansing, it was insane. It was like VE Day in Times Square at the end of World War II. So that is the story behind the T-shirt. There's a friend of mine in the chat who attended the University of Michigan who is unhappy with the story. But in any case, that answers your question, and I'm glad you brought that up. Yes, we do. Well, in any case, so I guess the last thing I wanted to say before I sign off today, and actually I'm glad that somebody asked about the T-shirt, because that story always cheers me up. And we need that right now, because things in the wider world are extremely grim right now, in the way that I started off the episode talking about with Dave Feldman and Emma Viglund. So to review, there is a plague still going on. A good chunk of the country is on fire because of the effects of global climate change, making fires in the West Coast more common. And Donald Trump is going to get another Supreme Court justice. And, Joe Biden, who, I tried very, very hard to stop from being the nominee, campaigning for Bernie, is the nominee, and things are so grim that that we're actually in this situation of having to hope that Biden does limp across the finish line. So in terms of any, future prospects for, the kind of reforms that we desperately need, for the kind of socialist future that we desperately need, again, things are looking very grim. I'll say what I said on the YouTube live stream that I did right after Ruth Bader Ginsburg died, which is that I have been reading Christopher Hitchens' book about Thomas Paine to research a book that I'm writing about Hitchens and what he was right about and what he was good about, between 1971 and 2001, and how he ended up turning in a bad direction at the end. And in there, by the way, there's a great shout out to our friend Harvey K. But I have been thinking a lot about that Thomas Paine line from when things were going bad during the Revolutionary War about sunshine. Summertime soldiers and sunshine patriots, who are with you when things are going well and they abandon you when things are going badly. It's been hard not to think about that, right? Because in February, I remember being in Nevada when Bernie Sanders was about to win that primary, and being very, very happy about that. And things since then have gone downhill, and they've gone downhill in many, many ways. But guys, you got to keep the hope, got to keep the faith, because this is a grim situation in many ways, but this is not anything that merits taking that black pill politically. That things are going badly. We have definitely lost some battles, but we are going to win the war. And you just have to keep a much longer term perspective in mind. I know that might seem like a slim comfort, but I think that is the way you've got to do it. Meanwhile, next week's episode is going to have Wozni Lambre, Big Waz from Woke Bros and other places. Also, Shahid Buttar, who is running against Nancy Pelosi because of California's, the way their primaries work. The top two vote getters in the primary, even if they're still of the same party, both end up in the general election. And so I have been supporting Shahid for several months. Michael Brooks and I were both in a Shahid Buttar commercial that came out in February. And there was a point where a lot of the left abandoned him because of allegations of impropriety that have since largely collapsed. And I think we got to learn a lesson from what happened to Alex Morris and stop falling for this stuff, start being a little bit more skeptical. But in any case, really looking forward to that show, and seriously, keep the faith, think in the long term, that we've lost some battles, and that's important, and I don't want to minimize that, and I want to be real about where we're at, but we are going to win the war. So solidarity forever, left is best. I will see you guys next week.